Hello everyone and welcome back to another deck guide, once again featuring the Mitsurugi and Ogdoadic archetype, but this time joined with some friends from other various reptile-inclusive archetypes to make a 60-card board breaker version that is primarily Mitsurugi, but uses some of the best tech from basically every other reptile deck. This is almost certainly not going to be the build of Mitsurugi that is topping YCS's, but if you like breaking boards, tributing opponents' monsters, and kind of playing a big pile of reptiles in the vein of what plants will often do, then let's get started. So first up is our new Mitsurugi Aramasa. Aramasa is similar to the other Mitsurugis in that if one of your reptiles would be destroyed while it's on field, you can tribute him instead to stop that destruction, and that works for any number of reptiles that would be destroyed, so it just stops Raigeki. It's pretty great. But even more importantly, when normal, special summoned, or tributed, you can add any one Mitsurugi monster from deck to hand. This enables some big one-card combos, and Mitsurugi did not have any one-card combos prior to this. The Ogdoadic part of the deck did, but Mitsurugi itself did not. We now have, I believe, 12 to 15, depending on how many you choose to play. Next up is Saji, which does everything the exact same, but its search is for a spell or trap. And then we've got Kusanagi. Kusanagi does everything the exact same, but instead of searching, it returns a Mitsurugi card from graveyard or banishment. Then another one of the new cards is Wosu, and Wosu is a kaiju effect where you can tribute a reptile from your hand and any monster from the opponent's field to special summon it, but it locks you into reptiles for the rest of the turn. That's okay because this deck is only really trying to do reptiles in the first place, and being able to get value off tributing a Saji or an Aramasa while simultaneously taking out your opponent's biggest threat is absolutely massive, and it also gives you a body. Less relevant, if this card is tributed itself, then you can discard a card to add it back to hand, which is cool for next turn, but it doesn't really apply to any combos or anything. Then we've got the new ritual monster, Habakiri. So, Ame no Habakiri no Mitsurugi is similar to the other Mitsurugi ritual monsters in that if it is tributed itself, then you can search any other Mitsurugi card, and then if it was properly summoned before you tributed it, so if you ritual summoned it and it is on the field, and then it gets tributed, it summons itself back. Unlike the other two, it doesn't actually do a whole lot on the field, only making your opponent's monsters lose 800 attack, which isn't nothing, but it's not great. Much more important is its hand effect, which enables all of our one-card combos, because this card allows you to reveal it, special summon a Mitsurugi from your deck, then tribute a monster you control. So your tribute can be the same monster that you summon, and its effect will still trigger. If you, say, search a Saji and then tribute it, you still get to search a spell or trap, which if you get the ritual spell, then you can use the ritual spell to summon the Ame, or to tribute the Ame to get another search to summon something from deck. It's very versatile and does everything for the deck. This card is crazy good. Then we've got the other rituals, which are much better on the field, but do not have hand effects. So Ame no Murakomo no Mitsurugi, if special summon, destroys all monsters your opponent controls. It's just a straight up board wipe on summon, and then it also has a minor disruption where if your opponent activates a card or effect, they have to discard a card or the effect is negated. That's only once per turn, so it's not like you're playing Ice Barrier, but it is still just a nuisance for the opponent to have to deal with. It's probably not backbreaking, but it's still a good effect. And then if this card is tributed, again, search anything, summon itself back. If you have not used its first effect this turn already, the act of tributing it, searching, summoning it back will trigger Murakomo to destroy all of your opponent's monsters, so it's just a board wipe on the opponent's turn. It's difficult to get rid of, especially because of our other ritual monster, Futsu no Mitama no Mitsurugi. So Futsu has a crazy strong effect where every time your opponent special summons a monster, you can target a reptile in your graveyard and special summon it. So that includes either of the other ritual monsters if they had been properly summoned already. You can just summon them back if the opponent removes them, but not Futsu. Or it can be any of your other stuff. Ogdoadic's got some stuff, extra deck stuff. If they try to remove, you can just bring it all back with Futsu, because it's not once per turn. Same thing, if tributed, it searches and summons itself back. Then we've got another new card, so starting our spells off is Magatama. So Magatama is a quick play that allows you to tribute a monster and destroy an opponent's card, or quick play ritual summon a Mitsurugi from your hand. So this is just versatile. It lets you outlet tribute the Murakomo to get the board wipe and then destroy like a spell or something. You can special summon Murakumo or either of the other two on your opponent's turn if you didn't manage to get everything on the board during your turn. Just a very versatile, very strong spell. And then we've got Mitsurugi Prayers. Mitsurugi Prayers allows you to tribute a reptile when you activate it to do both effects, otherwise you only get to do one, but the first effect is to add a Mitsurugi monster from deck to hand, so this acts as a one-card starter now, which is great. And then its other effect is take 800 damage and special summon a Mitsurugi from hand or graveyard, but it can't attack directly, so just be aware of that. Either way, that's not a big restriction, and if you tributed something, you get both of those effects, so you can tribute, say, an Aramasa, and then search Saji, immediately special summon Saji, it's on the field, you get the trigger, it's great. It's also a quick play, so you can do all of that on your opponent's turn, which, while it's not going to put a ritual monster on the field on your opponent's turn, putting any of the basic ones gives you protection from mass destruction, which is great. Then we've got Mitsurugi Ritual. So Mitsurugi Ritual allows you to ritual summon one of two ways. You can either summon something from deck by tributing reptiles from hand or field, or you can ritual summon from hand by tributing from your deck. So you can use each of those once per turn. So as long as you can recur this, which is what you're using Kusanagi for 9 times out of 10, you can do 2 ritual summons with just ritual, which lets you tribute stuff from deck, which triggers a whole bunch of effects in this deck. It's great. And it just allows you to get both Futsu and Ame on the field for your opponent's turn. So we play 3 of these, 3 prayers, 1 Magatama, just because everything in this deck is so incredibly searchable, and it's all so good. So you honestly can play this deck with 1 ritual, but having 3 means that you can more frequently search Magatama, and ritual is a more important piece to make sure you have in hand so it doesn't get drolled or locked away from you some way. So for the only trap that we play for the Mitsurugi engine, that's going to be Great Purification. We do not play the new one because its actual condition is like really difficult to hit, and then it doesn't feel as impactful as it needs to. So we're still just playing 1 Great Purification. And this is tribute a monster and negate an effect. It is not a counter trap, but still, it's still just an Omni negate, and we love that. Especially considering it is searchable by basically anything. So then we're on to the Ogdoadic engine, so we've got Naoya, which allows you to send itself to the graveyard and send a light reptile from deck to the graveyard. That is a 1-card combo as long as you have anything to tribute, and then if this card is special summon, which you special summon it from the graveyard all the time, you can add an Ogdoadic spell or trap from deck to hand, and we've got some good options for that. We also have Nunu, who is the opposite, which allows you to discard himself and send a dark reptile from deck to graveyard, which again is a 1-card starter even without an extra card to tribute. But it does take your normal summon to do that, so, you know, it's not your favorite one, but we do play both of these at 3 because they are great extension tools, great starters. They just do everything for the deck. We love it. Nunu also can, instead of searching something, it can special summon itself from the graveyard to your field as long as you control no monsters or just any one Ogdoadic monster. But it does lock you into reptiles. We don't care because we're playing almost exclusively reptiles in this deck. We play 1 Zoha the Ogdoadic Boundless. This card is not particularly great, but it is what you send off of Nunu if it is your only starter, because Zoha can discard any card from your hand to add himself from grave to hand. So you can special summon the Nunu from graveyard, add Zoha from grave back to hand, normal summon Zoha. That gets you into King of the Feral Imps, which searches you anything and everything in the deck, basically. We'll get to that. Then it has another minor effect that you might use once in a while, but it's not particularly important, where if this card is sent from field to the graveyard or special summoned from the graveyard, your opponent draws a card, you add an Ogdoadic monster from deck to hand, then both players discard a card. You're searching up something that's much more important, hopefully, than whatever they draw, so you normally come out ahead in the situation, but not by much. So the effect is worth activating most of the time, but it's not important. Then we've got the one that you're sending off of Naoya, which is going to be Curse. Curse, if it is in your graveyard, allows you to tribute any monster to special summon itself. Your opponent can special summon a monster from their graveyard, which is not a good idea for them because that monster's effects are negated, and that activates plays such as Wosu tributing their monster to give you an extra body, so it's actually really bad for your opponent to choose to special summon something off of Curse's effect, because we abuse that like nobody's business. And then when this card is special summoned, by any means, but most of the time it's going to be its own effect, you can target a level 4 or lower Ogdoadic and special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field, so you're always going to be summoning back the Nauya. So Nauya sends Curse, Curse tributes anything from your field, summons itself, summons Nauya, Nauya goes and gets our spells, which just starts the combo. Then we play Nephalibis. You can sometimes send this off of Nunu if you do not need to send Zoha, and this is a really strong extender in this deck, because if a monster is sent from hand or deck to the graveyard while this card's in your graveyard, you can special summon it, but it Reptile locks you, and if this card was special summoned from the graveyard, then you can special summon any one monster from the graveyard you want. So it is just a body that we can use for link material or what have you that can also get you back any single body that you need exactly when you need it. It's really, really good. It just didn't see a whole lot of play before we had a critical mass of reptiles to not have to worry about the reptile locks, because most of the rest of this deck doesn't lock you into anything. It's just kind of Nephalibis and a couple of the new Mitsurugi cards, but you know, now that we have Mitsurugi, we don't really have to worry about reptile locks anymore. And then we play one Aaron the Ogdoadic King, so this is one of the Ogdoadic's boss monsters. It is a level 8, and if it's in the graveyard, you contribute 2 monsters to special summon it. That's pretty cool. And if the opponent adds a card to their hand while this card is on the field, you can randomly send 1 card from their hand to the graveyard, so you could hit exactly what they searched or some other important piece, which is pretty dope. And if a monster your opponent controls is sent to the graveyard, you can search any dark or light reptile from your deck and add it to your hand for the next turn. So it is a kind of a weak disruption, but not too bad. Like discarding a card's pretty solid, and then it's also just follow-up. We can also use it as material for other things. In Ogdoadic spells, we play 1 Water Lily and 1 Daybreak. Both of these are searchable off of Nauya, so we only need 1 for our combo, and that's going to be Daybreak, but we play a Water Lily in case we happen to have the Daybreak already. Water Lily is a really strong extender, even if it's not a core part of our combo. Because Water Lily allows you to send a reptile from deck to the graveyard, and if you have 5 or more reptiles with different names in your graveyard already, you can special summon any one reptile from graveyard. So you send whatever piece you need that matters most at any given time, and then you get back whatever matters most. So it's very versatile, very strong. You just really want to make sure you're doing it pretty deep in the combo, and so it's not core to what we're trying to do. Much more core is Ogdoadic Daybreak, because this is a quick play spell that allows you to tribute any one reptile monster, which is awesome with the Mitsurugi stuff, and for every 2 levels the tributed monster had, you special summon a level 2 Ogdoadic token. So if you, say, tribute one of the Mitsurugi ritual monsters, they're all level 8, that gets you 4 tokens, or if you're tributing Curse, that's another 4 tokens. That's 4 bodies to work with, which is nuts. And that's not even all it does, because during your main phase, it has to be during your main phase, you can't use this even though it's a quick play at any other time, you can banish it, return a banished reptile to your deck, and then send a reptile from deck to the graveyard. Again, pretty much all of our cards are Foolish Burial and Monster Reborn combined, so we love that. Then we play some smaller engines, so we play a little bit of a Reptilian engine, so this one doesn't see a whole ton of play, but it's actually pretty solid when you are trying to go second and break boards. So Coatl allows you to special summon it from hand as long as you control a Dark Reptile, which all of the Mitsurugis are Dark Reptiles, and half the Ogdoadics are, which makes that incredibly easy to do. It's just a free special summon from hand if you ever draw it, which is why we play 3. And then if your opponent controls monsters with 0 attack, you can special summon Reptilians from your hand. We're not using that terribly often, but it is a level 4 tuner, which is important for a couple of plays. The Reptilians are technically a synchro archetype, even though we're only doing a couple of synchros with them. Coatl is important because she can also be treated as a non-tuner, so she is versatile for getting into synchros either way, which is cool because we have another tuner, which is Lamia. So this is our level 2 tuner, and if this card's in your hand and you have at least 1 reptile on your field, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, turn its attack to 0, and special summon this card, but you take damage equal to the monster's original attack. And then if you use this card as synchro material, you can turn another 2 monsters of your opponent's to 0 attack permanently. So that's kind of the Reptilians' whole thing, is they make the opponent's monsters 0 attack and then benefit from that in various ways. So obviously they're not great going first just because the opponent doesn't have monsters to turn to 0 attack, but in a going second build they gain a lot of value. So what are we doing once we turn our opponent's monsters to 0 attack? Well, we're summoning Reptilian Voski, of course. So Voski is a card that can be special summoned only by tributing 2 monsters with 0 attack from the field. So while we can tribute our Lamia for that condition, we would much rather turn our opponent's monsters to 0 attack, and then summon it by tributing 2 of their own cards. And then once on the field, not as a quick effect, mind you, she can non-targeting destroy a face-up monster the opponent controls, and then you can use her for material if you would like to from there, after she has already removed 3 monsters from the opponent's board. This card is an absolute house against Yubel specifically, and while I play 1 in the deck, you could argue that maybe it's a little bit too difficult to find 2 0 attack monsters on the opponent's board, but we play some stuff in the extra deck as well as our Reptilian engine, so it's not too bad to actually get them there. And then for spells and traps, we play 3 Reptilian Ramifications, so this is a searcher for the deck. It allows you to send 1 card from hand to graveyard and activate 2 of these 3 effects. The first is to add a Reptilian monster from deck to hand, the second is to add a Reptilian spell from deck to hand, and the third is to change the attack of an opponent's monster to 0, which turns on Voski and other things we'll get to in the extra deck. So this is just a really versatile extender, because even if nothing else, you can grab Coatl, and then you can choose to grab a spell, which you're going to always grab Reptilian Spawn. So Spawn allows you to banish any Reptilian monster from graveyard once you use it, then special summon 2 tokens, which you can just use for link summoning. So Ramifications is great, you grab Coatl, you use Coatl for a synchro, or even just a link, or to go into a King of the Feral Imps, and then you use its body in the graveyard to banish for Spawn to get 2 extra materials. You can also just use it as one of the things that turns an opponent's monster to 0 if you are trying to Voski them. Very good, very versatile card that just doesn't see as much play as I think it once did, but I think going second it's really good. I've had a lot of good interactions with it. And then for not so much engine pieces, just random extenders, we play 1 Nightsword Serpent, because if this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can just special summon it, but banish it when it leaves the field. So that includes tributing, so if you use the Mitsurugi ritual to tribute Kusanagi and Nightsword Serpent comes back to the field, Kusanagi gets you the ritual back, and then you also get whatever ritual monster you were trying to summon in the first place, so it's just value, value, value. So then we play 2 of Ragnarika Armored Lizard. We aren't playing a bigger Ragnarika package, but Armored Lizard is just a free extension tool, because you can just special summon it from hand by banishing any reptile from your graveyard. And then you can also discard a reptile from hand to target and bounce an opponent's monster, so it just is a really cool extension tool that has additional application if you are going second for board breaking purposes. It's also just level 4, so you can use it to go into a King of the Feral Imps. That's really a big thing with the extension tools we're playing between both Coatl and Armored Lizard. The Ogdoadics go into them like crazy. You're going to see why in just a second. Then we play 3 Snake Rains, because this card allows you to discard a card and send 4 reptiles from deck to the graveyard. So this is kind of part of the Ogdoadic package. You're sending normally like Nightsword Serpent, Naoya, Nunu, and Curse. Then lastly, for our engine, we play 1 Planet Pollutant Virus, so this is part of the alien lock that mostly comes out of our extra deck, but we do need to play this in the main deck, and when we use it, we contribute an alien monster from our field to destroy all face-up monsters the opponent controls, and then until the end of their 3rd turn after this activation, you put an A counter on everything. We'll talk about what that matters when we get to the extra deck. Then we only play 9 pieces of non-engine, so that sounds incredibly cripplingly low probably to you, but you have to think about the fact that we are a going second deck with access to a bunch of ways to tribute the opponent's monsters in the first place. We do not necessarily need a ton of non-engine, because we have so many quality extenders that we have access to, in addition to just being able to break their board in engine, that I honestly 9 might be more than we need. I've played a decent number of games with this deck, but I've still kind of been fine-tuning the number. I feel like this is a pretty good place to land on, even though we could technically play more extension tools, and I'm not sure we need this many non-engine pieces. But as for what they are, we're playing going second stuff, so Droll and Lockbird I feel like is the only hand trap that matters enough to actually play. Then we play the Triple Tactics package, because that allows us to get into something like Snake Rain, which just kills the opponent basically, or a Mitsurugi Prayers, or a Ritual. And then we also play Evenly Matched, because if Evenly Matched resolves, it just makes all of our board-breaking stuff moot, because they're already done as soon as Evenly Matched actually resolves. Which means that this normally is going to draw out any negate that the opponent has, which is fine by us, because that means our actual engine pieces land instead. Onto our extra deck, we play 3 of King of the Pharaoh Limbs, because King of the Pharaoh Limbs can be made with any 2 level 4s in our deck, and just searches any reptile from our deck, so it gets us from one engine into the next, especially because this is a soft once per turn, so we can make one, use it to search up an engine, or an extension piece, or Wosu to break a board, and then we can just link it off into something, and then we can slap 2 more 4s together, search any other thing that we need. This is the glue that sticks the deck together, and mark my words right now, King of the Pharaoh Limbs is probably going to get limited to 1 if Mitsurugi ends up topping stuff too terribly much. I feel like this is the card that people are going to be hitting in the Mitsurugi engine if anything's going to get hit. Which is sad, because I played Ogdoadics before this, and I'll play it after, but, you know, just meta stuff getting us hit. Unfortunate. But then we play both of the Synchro monsters for the Reptilian engine. So Reptilian Hydra is a 6. We can only really make this with Lamia, but if we make this, the opponent's probably lost the game, because this card can be Synchro summoned and then destroy all monsters your opponent controls with 0 attack and draw a card for each. So normally if we make a Hydra, it's when we're able to destroy at least 2 monsters off of its effect, which means we'll draw 2 cards, which just is so swingy, and then we can use her to just link off into something else. Then we play one of Melazine, because Melazine solos Tenpai, and she can be made with any level 4 and our Coatl from main deck. And what she does is she cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects when she was summoned with only reptiles, which is what we're always doing here. And then once per chain, not per turn, if your opponent activates a monster effect, you can make one of their monsters have 0 attack permanently. And then also she has a floating effect where if she somehow gets removed from the field, even though she can't be destroyed, and she wins combat automatically, she can add a reptile from deck to your hand. Just any one for next turn to just keep going. So this card is kind of a pet card of mine, because she's just so strong, but in a way that's kind of weird with how the game plays right now. Normally games are not decided in combat, but because she has protection to her, it kind of makes it more likely that she's going to be relevant to the overall game plan. We play 1 Skeletal Soldier because we can link into Skeletal Soldier and then use it to get back the Armored Lizard, which just lets us like link climb a bit with that. That's really all it's here for. It can also special summon itself from the graveyard on following turns so that we can get higher link ratings easier as follow-up, so it's nice, but not necessary, really. Then we play our 1 Alien Shock Trooper M-Frame. This is part of the Alien Lock, because this is going to be the alien that we tribute for Planet Pollutant Virus, and it does also have its own utility in that you can make it off any 2 reptile monsters, and then quick effect, you can discard a card to put a bunch of A counters on just whatever monsters. And that's pretty cool for the other part of the Alien Lock. It also just like lets you kind of use a Planet Pollutant Virus in some situations. Its other effect doesn't really ever matter, but if it is destroyed, which we're always tributing it, it never really gets destroyed, you can summon a bunch of stuff back from the graveyard, which is pretty cool, but not super relevant. Then we play an IP and SP. Sometimes all you can do is set a couple of link materials on the board and pass, and these are some of the better things you can do with just a couple of link materials. If you're in that situation in this deck, you've probably already lost, because this deck has so much extension that it's incredibly difficult to get us to that point, but it does happen. She also just lets you clear up some spaces on your board so you can keep going further. It's not a bad call. Because what IP actually does is she lets you link summon on the opponent's turn, and whatever you link summon with her is indestructible by card effects, which is pretty cool, and you can often go into SP Little Knight, where if she is summoned using a link material or any other extra deck material, you can target and banish something, and then when your opponent activates a card or effect, you can banish one card on your field and one card on their field until the end of turn. So SP Little Knight is technically 2 disruptions, and then if you go into her off of IP, she's like harder to remove as well. Just generally good generic cards that we can use if we get stuck there. Then back to the reptiles, we've got one Haggard Lizardos, which is a Link 2 that allows you to banish a monster to change the attack of a monster on the field, which is very relevant because we can banish one of our 0 attack Ogdoadics like Nunu or Nauya, and change an opponent's monster to 0 attack to turn on some of our Reptile Stuff, which is pretty cool, and then as long as you banished a reptile for that effect, you draw a card. So you gain extension and you turn on some of your Reptile Stuff, or just make it able to beat over some of the opponent's stuff in combat. It's great. Then we play one Reptilian Echidna, which when Link Summon allows you to change one of your opponent's monsters to 0 attack, and then you can Ignition Speed activate her other effect to, if your opponent has at least one monster with 0 attack, you can add reptiles from deck to hand equal to the number of zeros they have. So for example, if you say summon a Lamia, make one of their things a 0, you can link into Echidna, make something else a 0. You can then search up 2 cards, and then you can use the Lamia in any level 4 to go into Hydro, which lets you blow up the 2 that were already at 0, which draws you 2 cards, which is just gas on top of breaking the opponent's board. And then Zerol is our last piece for the Alien Lock, because it is a Link 3 that makes it so any monster your opponent controls with A counters on them change to defense and cannot activate their effects. And then this also, when Link summons, searches you Planet Pollutant Virus. So the idea is, as long as you can get Zerol and M-Frame on field, Zerol searches the Pollutant Virus on your opponent's turn, activate Pollutant Virus, tribute M-Frame. That means that for 3 turns, Zerol puts everything they summon into defense position and stops their effects from being activated. So it is Skill Drain that puts them in defense position for 3 turns. Do not rely too heavily on it because he is vulnerable to something just like Imperm or something turns off his effect, but it is just something that the opponent has to deal with. Then for destroying spells and traps, we play one Selene Snapper because she allows you to banish 2 monsters from your graveyard to destroy 2 spell or traps your opponents control. And then she, similar to other Ragnarika extra deck monsters, can bounce one of your cards to your main deck and summon herself back so that you can get back to high Link ratings easily. So she's just recursive spell trap destruction. She kind of destroys like stun and things like that. That's what she's here for. Just if we can't beat spells and traps, she's our big answer to them. And then we play one of Chain Coils, which is surprisingly easy to make in this deck. So her effect is that once your opponent activates any monster effect anywhere, you can then in a new chain activate her effect, which prevents either player from activating the effects of monsters in the hand for the rest of the turn. So she's really cool because she just stops either player from using hand traps. We don't use hand traps outside of like Droll, basically. So we don't care that much about it. Decks like, maybe a pure version of Voiceless Voice, which are very, very reliant on their hand traps, just have a horrible time against Chain Coil. And similar to the other Ragnarikas, you can bounce a card back to your deck to special summon her from graveyard once every turn. Lastly, for the extra deck, we play Underworld Goddess of the Closed World, which we can go into off of our IP Masquerena, and when summoned, you can use an opponent's monster as material, which is great because she's a Link 5, and it's hard to get 5 Link material on just our board alone, so we can borrow the opponent's cards for that. And then when she's special summoned, you can negate the effect of all face-up monsters your opponent controls, and then she is unaffected by anything that doesn't target her. On top of that, if you summon her off of IP Masquerena, she's also indestructible, and then once per turn she can negate an effect coming out of the graveyard. So she's just a whole bunch of stuff that's tough to deal with, on top of a removal that is impossible to really interact with. And then she's just a tower on top of that, so she's an incredible card that's really difficult to deal with. That's why she earns a spot in here, despite not being a reptile. And so that's the deck as I'm playing it, but I just want to point out some other stuff. So you could play an expanded Reptilian engine. I've done pretty well relying on like Ramifications and just Coatl. Those are the best cards to make sure you have as often as possible. Whereas I think one Lamia and one Bosky, they're very searchable. It's kind of fine to leave them at 1, but you could play more if you wanted to. Also, I thought about playing Invasive Alien Species. This is a sideboard card that if the opponent is very reliant on a field spell for their strategy, it becomes really, really good because it can special summon itself, and then it can also destroy a monster they control as long as the opponent has a field spell on their field. So if they are very reliant on that, this is board breaking and extension all in one. It's even level 4, which is exactly what we want it to be. So it's a great card, you just don't want to pull it in until you know the opponent has a field spell, because otherwise it's completely useless. Then just other board breaking tools depending on what you find out you need. Dark Ruler No More is great, but we play through Disruption enough that I don't find it super necessary. Spells and traps are a bit of a weakness to us, not too bad. We do have Snapper and some other stuff, but they're the ones that are going to get you in this deck, so you might look into playing something like Cyclone Storm or Feather Duster instead of some of our going second stuff. Another Thrust is not bad because it just gets you whatever you need if the opponent responds. The reason I've kind of leaned away from the Triple Tactics engine in general is a lot of people have started playing the Dominus cards instead of actual hand traps that are monsters because of the prevalence of these cards. So I've found that more and more often we go an entire turn without these cards being activated nowadays, which is kind of interesting. So you could play the third, but I kind of lean more towards letting off of these and playing other board breakers. If you want to do even better going first, which, trust me, we don't really need to do better going first, but if you want to, you can play Imperm because it does work as a going second or going first card. It's just a negate. And then for the actual Mitsurugi stuff, there is Mirror is a new ritual spell, but it is the weakest ritual spell. Importantly though, it names all of the Mitsurugi ritual monsters by name. That means that you can play 3 pre-prep of Rites and 1 Mirror, which allows you to search an Ame and the Mirror off of pre-prep. And then because you have Ame in your hand, that's just a 1-card starter. So if you wanted to play 3 pre-preps and the 1 Mitsurugi Mirror, that acts technically as 3 more 1-card starters, but I have not found that necessary in the deck yet. Just be aware that it is something you can do. And so, after 24 millennia, that will be it for our actual deck profile, and we're going to get into some just as long combos next. Look forward to it. So we're going to start off our combo section of the video with our Aramasa 1-card combo that is enabled by the new Mitsurugi cards. Let's get started. So we're going to normal summon Aramasa, which is going to grab Ame no Habakiri to hand, and we're going to activate Ame no Habakiri to summon out the Saji and tribute either one. Doesn't really matter, but Saji either way is going to grab us Mitsurugi Prayers, which we can activate tributing the Habakiri in hand to both search Ame no Murakomo and special summon back whichever one we tributed. Habakiri is going to grab us the Mitsurugi Ritual, and we're going to take a quick pit stop going into our first King of the Feral Imps to rotate into the Ogdoadic engine. Now he's going to send both itself and Curse to the graveyard, and then Curse contribute the King of the Feral Imps to special summon both itself and Naoya back, and then Naoya is going to grab us Daybreak. We can then use our ritual that we've been sitting on to summon the Murakomo by sending both Kusanagi and Nightsword Serpent to the graveyard. Kusanagi refunds the ritual we just used, and Nightsword allows us to go into our second copy of King of the Feral Imps to go grab Nunu. Nunu is going to send itself and Nephilim to the graveyard, and then we can tribute away our Curse for 4 tokens, and we can start linking up into the alien stuff, making a pit stop on Lizardos, banishing a card to draw an extra card. Hey, look, it's an Aramasa. Nunu special summons itself back because we have an Ogdoadic card, and we can link into Zerol to go get our Planet Pollutant Virus, but he won't stay long. We're going to link him into Chain Coils, for a reason you'll see soon, and use our last 2 materials to go into M-Frame. We can then banish Daybreak to send Aaron to the graveyard, which will trigger Nephilim to come back, and Nephilim can resurrect the Zerol one more time before we do our ritual to tribute Murakomo to get Futsu. Futsu is going to... Murakomo's going to search up our negate, and then we contribute both the Futsu and our Nephilim to go into Aaron. The Futsu is going to search up Magatama and resurrect itself as well, and this is our end board. What, did you think the profile was going to be the only long part of this video? So we've got the alien lock established between Planet Pollutant Virus tributing the M-Frame and Zerol just doing his thing by sitting on the field. Aaron rips a card out of our opponent's hand. Ame can be tributed at any time to search another card and either negate or destroy, and then when it special summons itself back, it'll board wipe. Ragnarika Chain Coils stops hand effects after your opponent activates any monster effect whatsoever, which we have no hand effects, so we don't really care, but they may be crippled by that. And then Futsu keeps bringing everything back. As long as we can protect the Futsu, anything else the opponent destroys does not matter. It can also be tributed for the effect that we don't use with Murakomo, and then it will search something for next turn and special summon itself back as well. So this is an incredibly sticky and disruptive end board with like multiple floodgates and a board wipe and a negate. It's real gross what this deck can do off one card, and hey look, because we passed through the Lizardos on our way to it, we just refunded the one card we used anyways, so in a normal game we'd be at 5 right now after doing all of this. It's gross and I love it. Cool. Alright, so next up is our Nunu 1.5 card combo. You just need anything in hand to discard for this one, and the Nunu does all of the rest of the work. So let's get started. Nunu's going to send itself in Zoha to graveyard. Zoha needs to discard anything to get himself back to hand, and we can normal summon him and bring the Nunu back as well to go into our first King of the Feral Imps, which is going to search us the Ame to go into the Mitsurugi line. Habakiri special summons Saji from deck and then tributes it, which triggers Saji's effect to grab Mitsurugi Prayers, and then we can do the same thing as last game. Prayers, tribute the Habakiri, grab Ame, bring back the level 4 we used, and then Ame can search the Mitsurugi Ritual, which we can immediately use this time, sending the normal candidates, and then we get a couple of triggers. We're going to get another level 4, and we refund the prayers that we already, or the ritual we already used. That gets us into our second King of the Feral Imps to search us the Nauya part of the combo. Nauya sends itself in Curse, tribute one of our Kings of the Feral Imps to bring both back, which is going to get us Ogdoadic Daybreak, and then we can link a couple of things away before we do our Daybreak stuff. Haggard Lizardos gets us a free draw, of course, and we make 4 tokens. The 4 tokens are going to go into Alien Lock stuff before we continue with our rituals. We get our Planet Pollutant Virus, we get our Shock Trooper M-Frame, we tribute our Murakomo to get out Futsu, which gets us our negate and brings him back, and then we can use Daybreak sending the Aaron again. Aaron can tribute a couple of cards, bring himself back. Futsu no Mitama is going to grab us Magatama, special summon itself back, and then we've got a pretty strong board still. So this one is a little bit weaker than just starting off of Aramasa, and I'm sure there's probably somewhere along the line I can optimize this to get a couple extra materials, but either way we've got the Alien Lock online, we have 1 negate, we have a board wipe, we've got a destruction, we've got stuff for next turn, we've got a hand rip. If this doesn't do it against a deck, very few things will. And we're back with closing thoughts on our Mitsurugi deck. So I'm going to keep this brief because we're already way too long on this video just because it's a 60 card deck, not that much non-engine, blah blah blah. But yeah, so Mitsurugi is an incredibly strong archetype after its second wave of support, and I fully anticipate it to be near the top of the meta. Well, I don't necessarily want to put a whole bunch of like meta decks on this. You can go to professionals for that. I top locals, not YCSs. It's a deck that I find very fun, so I want to do my own spin on it as this like going second board breaker reptile slop sort of pile. And rest assured, even this version feels incredibly strong. I'm just happy to be able to play the Ogdoadics in a way that feels competitive, and same thing with the Reptilians, like they actually work really well in this deck because they have this theme of tributing the opponent's monsters already, which is something that Mitsurugi now does as well. So it's just got really powerful types of disruption across the board, along with so many quality extenders. So even if you normal summon one of, say, like Aramasa and it gets disrupted, even if you don't have Habakiri in hand, even if you don't have prayers or ritual to keep going at that point, you might have Nauya, you might have Nunu, you might have Coatl to go into a King of the Feral Imps, you might have ramifications to search the Coatl and some extra link material, you might have an Armored Lizard. Just the ease of making a rank 4 in this deck means that our extension tools are so varied and so powerful. Any 2 level 4s becomes a new engine, and we have so many easy reptile-based ways to make level 4s, it doesn't really feel fair. On top of that, we don't get stopped by that many hand traps. So, like, Droll hurts, obviously, but some of our stuff will summon straight to the field. We can still use both parts of Mitsurugi Ritual through a Droll and Lockbird, which is very scary. We just can't search our extra card when we tribute something like Habakiri, but that's fine. Droll obviously hurts us, it hurts every deck. And Nibiru, if you're afraid of Nibiru, you can just leave Futsu on the field without having tributed it, and then if they Nibiru at the end of your turn, because you don't establish like an on-board negate in this deck, then you can wait, let them Nibiru, keep the Mitama, bring it back, and then on the opponent's turn, if they don't have something to immediately deal with it as well, a second time that is not a tribute, then it starts to bring back everything else that the Nibiru hit. It's just so strong at rebuilding a board after a major interaction. Same thing with an Evenly. It's not as good against Evenly because everything gets banished, but you can still start summoning back material after material after material, even if it's not your normal end board. So yeah, deck is kind of cracked and broken. I'm not sure I would change anything on this list outside of maybe I don't want the thrusts. I don't know. Depends on your metagame. If people are still using a lot of hand traps, then the triple tactics cards are still really good. You can't play any of the Dominus cards in this deck because we do use light and dark. We pretty much only use light and dark, but still that's enough to lock you out of Dominus, so that's some weakness in this deck. But like going first, we establish a nigh unbreakable board, and going second, we break boards like nobody's business and have immense amounts of extension tools available to us to just build through the opponent's disruptions. In that way, I guess it kind of feels like something like Mermail, where you get an unfair amount of advantage at cost, so you can keep going. Like, if you start with a 6-card hand, you can still go for like 8 cards deep, so the opponent has to have way more than just 6 disruptions to actually fully stop this deck if it's firing on all cylinders, which is crazy. But anyways, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you liked it, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.